Disability Sunday 2021. How does your church welcome, include, and provide access to you as a disabled person?
By listening to what I said that I needed and hearing it and doing something about it.
Over the last year, I've been worshipping with church online, and how my church has included me with that is I've been able to get on board in a leadership role. I've been Bible reading, I've completed intercessions, and even got the opportunity to preach by filming myself at home like I am doing now to you, and sending in my videos to those who are leading that service. And we have pipes, thick pipes running down the side of the pews, and it's actually a step up to get in our pews. So the current setup isn't wheelchair friendly at all. So what church have actually done is create these two spaces of where I can go, and it's up to me of how I feel on the day. They've moved some cabinets from the back of church and created a space near the back where I can sit. I can sit with my children. Hopefully when they wish to come back to church, they could have a seat next to me. There's also the opportunity to sit right at the front with a wheelchair.
My church has been really welcoming to me. They've enabled me to participate physically in lots of ways, both by making adaptations to buildings where we meet, but also through having realistic expectations of what I'm physically able to do and not do, and the things that I haven't been able to do. We've built teams and other people do them, which is great. So I get to kind of play to my strengths and other people play to theirs, and we muddle along together with the Holy Spirit. I hope that that's how we enable and welcome other people too, whatever they may come with to our church. You want everyone to be able to play a part in our family of faith, where there's always room for one more.
So we've been fortunate enough to be gifted some ramps for church, and these are wheeled ramps, so it is helpful for our verger, so he's not having to lift. We can get one of these ramps up the first initial step, and there's a bit of a platform, so I could go there, so I've got a bit of being a bit raised for the congregation. Or I could use a purchasing stool, so I can transfer from my wheelchair using my crutches to get to a purchasing stool, so I can get that height, and a portable mic pack rather than one that I need to hold, so I can navigate with my wheelchair, and I'm free to use my hands to talk and worship and pray. I've got autistic children, so my church are quite good at letting us know in advance if there's going to be any changes to church, if there's any particular smells that might be needing to make the children aware of, if it's going to be longer than normal, fidget bags for them, that's something that they're going to be getting together. I take their ear defenders if they want to.
My own church is fully wheelchair accessible, and as a sight loss friendly church provides service sheets, hymns, words, notices and whatever else is used in services, gatherings or meetings by email in advance. That's my preferred method of provision. As a church, we went online at the start of the pandemic and have now moved to a hybrid provision, which ensures that those who are unsure or unable to attend the building can still be part of the worshipping community.
So I've got designated members of my church family who I know I can just sort of wave at, and they'll come over and help me. This is really empowering that church have decided to do this for me, and it makes me feel able to be independent at church.
Well, a simple thing that they do is offer variety. So as well as the big Sunday service, there are lots of midweek services, which means that if my condition means I'm in too much pain or have too much fatigue to leave the house on a Sunday, I can still go after work on a Monday or a Thursday to a short said service that's over in half an hour. And that means I can stay connected to my church.
How could the church as a whole be more welcoming, inclusive and accessible for disabled people?
Disability access shouldn't be an additional thing to think about. It should be part of the DNA of a church. If a church isn't accessible for everyone, then is it truly a welcoming and loving place? I thought issues of accessibility had improved during the lockdown, as everyone felt the impact of restricted lives, as everyone stepped in some way into the lives of those of us who are disabled. Sadly, it's been proven that I am far too optimistic, as churches have dropped their online services. I'm genuinely shocked by how many churches have stopped all of their online provision and abandoned those unable to attend the buildings. I'll say that again. By dropping their online provision, they have abandoned those who can't attend the building. What does this say about these churches? What does it say about the church community? What does it say about how those churches value people who work shifts, care for family members, are disabled or chronically ill, or living with anxiety around the pandemic? These are key questions which every church leader and community should be asking themselves. I think I know what Jesus would do, and it wouldn't be to exclude people.
We may need frequent bathroom visits, so actually being at the front might not be that ideal for us. So yeah, being at the back is great, but ideally it would be wonderful if we could be seated in the middle, because it makes you feel more included as the church family and that you're not just sort of pushed off to one side. That is my vision and hope for the future of my church. Just take a little bit off your pews, so you're making them slightly shorter, so you're creating that wheelchair space. I did worship in a church once where that's what they did too, so wheelchair spaces were available at the back and the middle, and that worked really, really well. Or perhaps if you're not a listed building, you can take out the end aisles and have flexible seating and leave your pews in the middle. So we've got a mixture of flexi seating for those who need it and traditional as well.
A starting point for churches being more welcoming, inclusive and accessible for disabled people is to ask. By using the simple ask approach, the input of disabled people can help us to know the best way to do church with them. A. Ask. Get in touch with disabled people in your community and ask them to help you to get this right. Tell them that you really value their input and that together you can make a difference. Ask them what barriers they have experienced. There will probably be some you haven't thought of, and agree to work on removing them together. S. Seek. What solutions can they think of? Are there ideas that have been helpful to them in other settings that could be adapted to work in your context? And K. Know. Learn from disabled people themselves. They will have a wealth of knowledge to share that can help us in our context. Let them be your guide.
Take the time to find out what people need for church to be accessible to them. Don't assume that you know, and don't miss people that would never say anything. Be aware always of how people might be struggling, whether they say anything about it or not, and don't assume that what's best for you is best for everybody.
There's one thing that is really important. If you are using screens in your worship, is to remember that anybody who needs to be seated because of their disability is unable to see that screen when members around them are standing up. So having sheets of paper for those who need to be seated available is a must. And thinking about this with COVID and how this can work, perhaps you need to have a few laminated orders of service and a few paper versions of your hymns that you can give out, and these can be kept clean each week as well. Using the wording, worship how you feel comfortable. This is the most inclusive form of wording.
I think treating each person as a beloved individual of God who is created in his image, and being aware of what helps people to participate and not just be someone who sits in a chair or on a scooter or in a wheelchair or whatever, but actually might be able to lead from the front or lead from within. I'm hoping that everyone would be able to play their part, but I know even in a church where several of us in the leadership team have conditions, we still fall short sometimes, and so there's always more you can do, and the most important thing is to extend the welcome that God extends to each and every person and invite them to participate in the work of the kingdom.
I think one absolutely key thing is to build up understanding. The more that we can think through the issues that people might be facing before they ever arrive and seek to address them before we have somebody necessarily to address them for, the better. We don't wait to build a wheelchair ramp until a wheelchair user wants to come to church. We don't wait to put in a hearing loop before somebody who needs hearing aids comes to church. We don't wait to buy large print copies of hymn books and Bibles until we have somebody who's visually impaired who wants to come to church. We put these things in place ahead of time, and we think through all those kinds of issues of what might help somebody and what might therefore encourage somebody to think that we might be a church that wants them to be there.
Just to remember that not everybody is able to carry a drink, and I don't just mean people in chairs or with walking aids. People who might have a stammer or a shake won't be able to carry a drink without the risk of scalding themselves or spilling it on themselves. So please offer to help where needed. When we are doing our sharing of the peace, not everybody likes to hold hands or hug, and obviously given these COVID times, I would suggest you using the sign language, the BSL version of Peace Be With You. It's available on YouTube and it's so easy to do, and it'd be wonderful if everybody in congregations could do this.
Start with your website. Does it describe the accessibility to your front door of your building from wherever I'm going to park my car, or the bus or taxi will drop me off? Describe the path, what it's made of. Is it lit? Are there steps? Is it made of gravel? Ugh. If you have welcomers on the door, make sure they're smiling and not looking horrified at the sight of a wheelchair or a guide dog user coming up the path. And remember, guide dogs are legally protected in law. They're not pets. Maybe have a bowl of water outside to welcome them. When we get into the building, is it well lit and evenly lit? Are the noise levels high or low? Try and keep light and noise as even as you possibly can. And then the service itself. Is the liturgy printed or on screen? Can it be seen clearly? Are the contrast colours good? Have you asked anyone with sight loss issues whether they can actually read what's on the page or on the screen? And do we all have to stand up to sing? Can we just choose our own posture and be welcome to do so? Can wheelchair users and guide dog users sit wherever they choose, or are they made to sit where they have to because there's no other space for them? Is your furniture flexible or inflexible? And if you're thinking about making your building and your worship more accessible, have you involved disabled people in that process, or have you made assumptions?
If you have any questions, please get in touch at info@youbelong.org.uk.